Well, happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, January the 28th, the 28th day of the year, and we are not expecting any more snow anytime soon. It was fun while it lasted. We've been living on the Gulf Coast of Florida for 25 years, and that was a first for us, having snow on the Gulf Coast. We've been through a couple of hurricanes, but never a snowstorm. How much snow did we get? Well, throughout the region, the estimates were anywhere from 5 to 9 inches. I even saved a photo of that first night to show you. So if Sean can put that photo up, I'll show you. We had snow all over, man. It was so much fun. You see those footprints. Of course, that's me because I had to walk out there and just see if I could make tracks in it. But it was a great time. It was good while it lasted. And so it was history down here. And so I've always been a history person, always had an interest in what happened before me or any unusual kind of circumstances or occurrences. It's been said history is made up of individual moments. Well, last week in Northwest Florida was one of those moments. It was the first snow in the area since the 1980s. 70 miles of Interstate 10 was shut down, and later they had to expand that to 192 miles. And if you're familiar with I-10, you know that it goes from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. There were about 12 inches of snow reported around Pensacola. The airports were closed. You know, and in other locations, our guests today are from Chicago. This is not a major deal. It's not a major catastrophic deal. But we're talking about Northwest Florida. And where we have hurricanes, yes, and we've been through a couple of hurricanes. But snow, no. No way, man. Sunshine, beaches, fishing, swimming, and more sunshine, but not snow. But it was fun while it lasted. Our G-list guests today are two people who are making life better for others, and who's making life better for others, their life mission. And they are Verneice Prince and Don Mahannah. Verneice was born and raised in Chicago. She was in youth care with DCFS, and she will explain all that. She lived in various foster homes, group homes, or teen shelter until she finally was able to live on her own through an independent living program on the north side of Chicago. We look forward to having that conversation with Verneice. It should be very, very interesting. Don Mahannah, I hope I pronounced it right, Don. Forgive me if I didn't. He is the treasurer in community engagement for Integrity Counseling, meeting the needs of people who would not otherwise be able to get mental health care in that area due to their income. It sounds like a very interesting show. We look forward to having that conversation with both Verneice and Don. So our show today, of course, is brought to you by the consulting firm of Best Girl, Inc. Let's hear from Best Girl.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly-Gossam, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
Best Girl continues to customize the solution that fits your needs. So we're going to go to our roundtable, regular, but I got to make a comment first. Barbara Wallace Edwards, who is a team regular, who's been with us since we started in the beginning. Barbara has a touch of the COVID and won't be with us this morning. We're going to pray that she gets better and that she'll be back with us next week. Barbara, if you're watching, then get better, and we'll miss you. So let's get Michael Walker on. Michael is here. Good morning, Michael. How are you, man?
Good morning, TG. I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm doing well. So the round table is me and you this morning. So what do you got for us?
Well, first of all, let me just say, Barbara, get well soon. We miss you. We love you. And we look forward to being with you next week. you know, it's interesting, Tom, where you talk about what's going on in the country right now. And over the weekend, the U.S. Air Force decided to remove videos from the curriculum for Air Force training due to the new president's executive order to remove DEI in federal agencies and what have you. And I find that interesting that the Air Force confirmed by saying it will fully execute and implement all directives outlined in the executive orders issued by the president. And so they carried it out with utmost professionalism by removing any history of the Tuskegee Airmen and their contribution. They also removed videos and course curriculum about the first women that served in the Air Force during World War II. And I found it interesting that the senator from Alabama immediately responded and said, "This will not stand." And she had no doubt that the new secretary, Pete Hegseth, that was under scrutiny to become the new Secretary of Defense, that he would turn this around. And he responded and said, "We're all over it, Senator. This will not stand." And so yesterday, Monday, he reversed that. And, you know, this is a lesson of unintended consequences. When you do a blanket order like that, you never know how people may implement that.
Right.
And, I find it interesting, all the outrage, but what did they think would really happen?
Right.
And one part of me, Tom, I'm like you, I'm kind of cynical. You rub it off on me. I kind of think that maybe the Air Force did that intentionally, knowing that it would cause this backlash and they'd have to reverse it, because I cannot think that somebody in their right mind would just sit there and say, okay, since we're going to get rid of DEI, let's remove the Tuskegee Airmen. Because as you know, Tuskegee Airmen was created before DEI was ever thought about.
Right.
Your response?
Well, I find it interesting. Again, this guy, and you know which guy I'm talking about, sits up there and he says, well, let's just get rid of all DEI. Well, if you have people who's responsible for those areas of the government and so on and so forth, if you allow them to do their jobs the way that they've been trained to do their jobs, you don't have this kind of dummy stuff. But he's showing that he's in charge, and I'll just say this: he's just lucky he ain't in jail. But that's my thoughts on it. I don't know. I find that. I mean, how are you going to erase the Tuskegee Airmen? Come on, man. I mean, I don't know. That's almost embarrassing.
Yeah. And what's funny about it is, I just heard this morning that, I don't know, it may be 13 or 15 attorney generals from across the country. They're now attacking Costco about their DEI initiatives because Costco pushed back on it.
Right.
And said they're going to continue with it. So all these attorney generals are now going after Costco to try to force them to remove their DEI initiatives. And now, it's funny. On one hand, they talk about capitalism. And I will say this, the Republican Party, they always preach free enterprise. Okay. So now when you come to DEI, you have all of these attorney generals that are now going to insist that these private companies get rid of DEI, just like the federal government. Okay. But then on the other hand, you have the SBA that's set up to help small business owners. And if they get a small business loan and then they need to do a modification or deferment and all that, the SBA doesn't enforce guidelines on the banks. They let the banks do whatever they want to do. Mm-hmm. So you can't have it both ways, And how are you going to tell a private company like Costco and all these other companies that you cannot implement your DEI missions.
Well, and another thing is, so if we're not going to have DEI, then you're going to rely on merit, right? And we know how merit has worked over the years. And I can personally sit here and say, I know you know how merit works, because you and I have been involved in 2 or 3 or 4 of these situations in corporate America. AT&T, Bell South, where we both worked, and I was going to hire you, and then the guy sent your information to the guy. The guy said, "This guy is wonderful. We need to hire him. Whenever we get another black slot, we'll put him." We can't hire him till we get a black slot. And so, merit hadn't worked. It hadn't worked. It's never worked, and it's not going to work in this case. But I think, this guy made a promise to people who feel that that is something that needs to happen in society, and he's trying to, quote, fulfill his promise. And plus, he just always wants to stir up stuff.
Yeah, I hear you. But the thing about it is, it causes other people on the fringe to feel like they now have a license to judge somebody.
Sure.
And what I mean by that, Gabby Thomas, who's an Olympic champion that also graduated from Harvard, over the weekend, there were people saying some guy decided that she was not smart enough to have graduated from Harvard, and therefore she faked her Harvard diploma and was lying about her credentials. And Gabby responded, and not only that, Harvard reported that Gabby graduated with a degree in, I think, neuroscience or something like that, and then got a master's from Texas A&M. But you got some idiot out there that said she doesn't sound smart enough to have graduated from Harvard, so therefore she faked her diploma. Can we just stop with the nonsense? It doesn't make sense. What give him or her or whomever it was the feeling that they are now emboldened to make a judgment like that on somebody else that just happens to be of a different ethnic background of themselves?
Maybe it makes them feel better. I don't know. Maybe it makes them feel more accomplished because they didn't get to go. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. And so you got to try to find a reason. And so when you said the senator from Alabama, you didn't mean Tommy Tuberville. You meant the woman who's the senator now. Yeah,
absolutely. Tuberville wouldn't say that. I don't think he was smart enough to decipher the difference in that.
No, I agree with that. And I don't know how smart this woman is. I know she's smart book-wise. I don't know how smart she is in terms of how you negotiate stupidity, because it's pretty hard to negotiate when people are being stupid.
Yeah.
So what else you got, Michael?
We're coming to the end of football season with the NFL, and we're into basketball, and your alma mater, my alma mater, as well as Barbara's, they had a rock fight of a game down at Neville Arena Saturday night with Tennessee coming to town to play Auburn. And you had 2 highly rated teams going at it. Auburn averages about 86 to 90 points a game. They won, I think, 53 to 51.
Wow.
And the halftime score was in the 20s. And it was one of these games where you talking about physical basketball, Tom, they could have had on some pads out there on the floor. It was a game for grown men out there.
Okay.
And, there were a lot of close calls and what have you, but Auburn ended up coming out on top. And I think not just because, I'm an alumni, but I think Auburn has a resume to prove that they should be number one and remain number one, because they have more quad 1 wins than any other team in the country. And the second place team, Auburn has, I think, 11 or 12 quad one wins, meaning highly ranked wins, where they basically blew out the competition, except for here recently with Tennessee, and Georgia. The next closest only has 8 and what have you. So it's going to be interesting to see where they're going to go. And their star player, Broom, came back. They had missed him for 2 games because of an ankle injury.
Why was the score so low? Did Tennessee purposely keep it a slow down game?
Yes. They wanted to play. They wanted to muddy it up and play physical because they couldn't run with Auburn, in other words, and play the finesse game. And so it was forcing Auburn to get down and dirty and play physical.
Well, and Pearl, the Auburn coached at Tennessee. So was that a factor in any of this? Was there some bad feelings or anything?
I wouldn't say bad feelings, but it was, one of these things. We're going to get you. We got to show you. You left Tennessee and you here at Auburn and you got Auburn on the rise. So we're going to come down and spoil the party, Okay. But, it's funny. We talk about basketball and what have you. And I read this morning that the highest price tickets for basketball are coming up between Alabama and Auburn in about 2 weeks. A single ticket up in the nosebleed section costs about $380 something or $400 in the nosebleed section.
Wow.
And then when they come to Auburn, it's even higher than that. Standing room only is going to be about $500. And if you wanted courtside seats, like 8 rows from the hardwood, a family of 4, it would cost over $1,100 when they come to Auburn to play the last day of the season.
And, of course, when I went to Auburn before you, or what have you, man, sometimes you could go to a game and just walk right down there and sit on the front row. And yeah, so I'm proud for him. I'm glad for him. I think it's doing well, and I know that the people on campus are pretty excited about it. So
yeah, it's interesting. You bring that. You reminded me of something when I was playing high school basketball at Auburn. I remember we used to just go there and go to the games because we played high school basketball at Auburn. We could just walk in the Coliseum,
Right. Well, they've done a good job. Pearl's done a great job, and we'll see where it goes. I'm glad that the students are enjoying it.
Well, let me ask you this: is Auburn becoming a basketball school?
I think Auburn. I mean, is basketball taking the emphasis away from football? I don't think so. But I do think you can have more than one sport. And, I've always been a basketball fan. So I think so. But I think, we didn't do that well in football this year. So I think everybody just kind of moved on to the next thing, which is basketball.
Well, what do you think about the Super Bowl? Kansas City and Philly.
Kansas City is hard to beat, man. I heard this Orlovsky, what's his name? Dan Orlovsky, something like that.
Yeah.
He makes sense when he does his analysis. And Dan said yesterday that the Chiefs have a player for every situation. And so if you need a 3rd and 5, they got a 3rd and 5 guy. If you need such and such, that they've got people that fit in those slots and who they can count on to do those things. And they really. And after I thought about it, it's like, well, that makes sense. I have always liked Jalen Hurts ever since he got dogged at Alabama. I've always thought Jalen Hurts was the guy. And so I I don't. I think I honestly can say I think this is one of those where I think if either team comes out on top, I'll be okay. I just want to see it as a good game. You know, Dixon, our son, lives in Maryland, lives in Savannah, and he used to live in Baltimore, and he was a big Ravens fan. So the Ravens not winning probably saved me a lot of money because we're not going to the Super Bowl now. But
you get to see it for free now.
I'm sorry.
I said you get to see it for free now.
Yeah, I get to stay at home and watch it. I'm looking forward to it. Kansas City is going to be tough to beat, and but I hope Jalen does well. They dogged that guy out so bad with what he can't pass, he can't do this, he can't do that. And then after the game, I heard somebody say Jalen Hurts was awesome. It's like, oh, okay. If they won, so now it's awesome. So anyway.
Well, Tom, if you remember, in the other Super Bowl between Kansas City and the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts outplayed or outperformed Mahomes in that game. Yeah. He had one mistake, I think, was when they were going for that first down that I think he fumbled the ball.
Yeah.
And that kind of turned things. But other than that, he outperformed and outplayed Mahomes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think maybe the difference this time is that they have a running back in Saquon Barkley that's tearing it up. And, I don't know. The line is Kansas City by 1.5 points.
Oh, is that all?
Yes.
One thing I can say, when Saquon hits that crease, it's all over. When he hits that crease, buddy, he's gone. And they're just fun to watch. And so I'm looking forward to a good game. I don't know. People got upset about Kansas City winning. I don't know. It's no worse than when New England used to win all the time. And Brady, they call him Ken, Ken and Barbie. He's got that Ken look on the games. And so we'll see. We'll see.
Well, they're now calling Mahomes Baby Jesus because they're saying he gets all the calls now, and Kansas City's getting all the calls. So Kansas City's getting a little haterade because they feel like the refs are favoring them, and every close call always seemed to kind of go Kansas City's way.
Yeah, and I don't know. We'll see how it turns out. I think. Mahomes just, hey man, he comes to play, and they know how to win, and it's a difference in playing and winning. And their intention when the game starts, they have one intention, and that's to win the game. And everything they do is designed to win the game, not just win the moment, but to win the game. And I know. From my experience, that how hard it is to win a championship. Never played on a championship team. Played on some really good teams that only lost one game over 12 or whatever. But winning a championship is just something that's really, really special. And, it's very, very, it's tough to do. You gotta get there. And for them to win, they're going for a three-peat now, so this will be the third one in a row. We'll see. I like Jalen, but I like Mahomes too, so it's interesting. And I think you got Buffalo, you got Kansas City, and you got the Ravens, and I think they're all right there together. I think Kansas City is probably a little bit higher than the others, but I think they're all really good teams, and everybody can win, man.
Well, here's something here. Don't forget the Washington Commanders with a rookie quarterback Jalen Daniels. They
Well,
call
he's
him
tough, man.
Silky Slim. They call him Silky Slim.
He's tough, I tell you, he really is. And,
6'4", 210.
is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he's tough. He can thread that needle.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny when he runs with those little quick steps, but he has long legs. It's
Yeah.
funny watching him run,
Yeah.
but he's moving, putting some
He
separation.
is. He is. It's great. Let me say something before I forget. Barbara's out today. Joyce had to step in for Barbara, and Sean was out because she had an exam today. She's in school. And you're here. And I just want to say that we have a great team to work with. You guys are great, and nobody fusses. And if I say to you, Michael, Barbara's not going to be here today, and so you may have to do a little more, whatever, you guys always pitch in, and I just appreciate it. We got a good team. And, talking about Kansas City, whatever, when you got a good team and everybody does their part or what have you, it's just a special thing to watch it work. And I think that's the way, I watched that big number 95 for Kansas City, whatever his name is. He played defensive line. Man, shoot. I wouldn't want to have to run up against that joker, He's something. So I'm not comparing our team to Kansas City, but we got a good team, and I really appreciate you guys. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
It's a pleasure.
Okay. We're going to move on then. Let's go to Sean. I think she's got a minute for us.
Good morning to everyone joining in with us. My name is Shantia Jones, and this has Got a Minute. Do any of you like poetry? Well, after taking several literature classes myself, I can honestly say I'm hooked, which is why I'm super excited about today. On this day, Edgar Allan Poe's famous poem, The Raven, beginning Once Upon a Midnight Dreary, is published in the New York Evening Mirror. Poe's dark and gruesome work reflected his own difficult life. Born in Boston in 1809, Poe was orphaned at the age of 3 and went to live with a family in Richmond, Virginia. Poe studied at the University of Virginia, but was expelled for gambling. In 1827, Poe self-published a collection of poems. 6 years later, his short story, MS Found in a Bottle, won $50 in a story contest. He edited a series of literary journals, including the Southern Literary Messenger in Richmond and Burton's Gentleman magazine in Philadelphia. Poe's excessive drinking got him fired from several positions. His work, often portraying motiveless crimes and intolerable guilt that induces growing mania in his characters, was a significant influence on other European writers. Go out and read a poem today. Thank you all for joining in. My name is Shantia Jones, and this is Got It.
Well, Hollywood's got the A list, and here on Tuesdays with Tom, we have the G list, and our G list guests today are two of them. We have Verneice Prince, who was born and raised in Chicago. She lived in various foster homes, group homes, and a teen shelter. She was finally able to live on her own through an independent living program on the north side of Chicago. When Verneice found out that she was aging out of foster care system, she realized she did not have anywhere else to go. No bond with biological family due to not having time with them and moving around. So much kept her from bonding with the family, so the military was her only alternative. She attempted college twice prior to joining the military, and social anxiety had the best of her. Our other guest is Don Mahannah. Don is the treasurer in community engagement for integrity counseling, meeting the needs of people who would not otherwise be able to get mental health care in that area due to their income. So let's welcome Don and Verneice this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Tom and Michael. How are you all?
We're
Doing
doing
well.
fine. How you guys are doing?
Doing pretty good, thank you.
Okay, well,
Beautiful
we're going
day.
to start off with some questions, and if we don't ask what you'd like for us to know, you can join in with that as well. Michael, you want to start off?
Sure. Good morning to both of you guys, and thank you for being with us today. Verneice, I just got to say, reading your bio, it's absolutely, um, I don't have words to express all of the difficulty you have overcome in order to be here today. And it's a testament to your mental toughness and intestinal fortitude. You're certainly an inspiration. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And
Thank you so much for having me.
absolutely. And Don, we'll get to you. Let me start with Verneice. Verneice, I was reading something about your upbringing and going through DFACS, Department of Family Children Services, and what have you, and
Hmm.
foster care and going from place to place and not being able to locate or build a bond with your biological family. And it said that some of the incidents, and I won't go into them unless you want to speak about them, the abuse and stuff that you suffered, but it said that it caused you to be a self-mute
Hmm.
and forsake your childhood by focusing on future as an adult. Can you take us into your mentality there, and what does it mean to be a self-mute? Explain that to us, please.
So I actually didn't find out about being a self mute until later in life, reading about another woman who went through a similar situation. So basically, I didn't talk. I did, all through grammar school, high school, even some college, here at ISU. Typically, people would see me and they'll reach out to me and talk to me and may build some conversation. But I've left some colleges, attending school at the level of my associate's degree, because even though I may have had good conversation with them then, once I was in college, I had a lot of anxiety about what was going to happen the next day. Like, this is not typical me to talk to someone. So when I come back, if I'm quiet, how are they going to take that? How can I talk to them? How can I build this relationship? And I just didn't return back to the school. So that's just how bad it was for me. Just, growing up through my years. So yeah, it was very difficult for someone to talk to me. Like, in the past, when I was younger, like you asking me that question, I literally couldn't force words out of my mouth. Even if I was thinking of a response, I wouldn't be able to communicate with you out of, I don't know. The social anxiety is something that I learned about later in life as well. That's why the mental health services is so important to me. Because even though I had counselors, I never really knew what they were for and that they were there to help me. So I pretty much treated them the same way. I just sat there and looked at them and just kind of talked with them myself, rather than to talk to them.
So let me ask you something from the other end of the spectrum. So it says once you were in the military, you took a class in business management and administration, and you received your first A.
Yes.
You feel like you could succeed at college. Tell us about getting that first A. What was that?
Okay. Yeah. So I went to Harold Washington College in Chicago, and also attended Morrison Institute of Technology, wanting to be an architect. And I left both of those schools because I found it difficult. I just felt suffocated and I felt alone. And I didn't have a lot. So once I joined the military, after not really having any, not being able to go back, not being able to, go with family, I just I guess I kind of heard the commercial about the Army and decided, hey, they have the money, I have clothing, I have food. So when I got there, I learned about the educational opportunities. So I took a class, I was able to go into it, and I worked really hard at it. And yeah, I earned an A and I was doing really well. And I think I might have grown a little bit from, prior to that. And so when I received the A and saw it on paper, it let me know, because I think I might have been at the point where I was giving up on it because I was not succeeding at it at that point. And so that inspired me because I worked so hard, even though I was a self-mute and I wasn't communicating. I was always observant. I was always listening. I was always learning. And I knew how important an education was. And so I definitely wanted a higher education. And so me getting ready to give up on it, I was saddened by that. And once I took that class and passed it with an A, and I saw it, just this overwhelming feeling like, wow, like I really can succeed at it, if I wanted to. But I still continue to have that, the social anxiety piece. I just knew if I focused on my studies that I could achieve higher education.
Okay, so Don, tell us about your end of this business.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here. Integrity counseling, my wife Luella and I started it in 2014 with essentially the goal to provide access to care for people who wouldn't otherwise have it. My wife had spent a number of years helping in homeless shelters and had been actually working through getting towards her license by being a counselor in a homeless shelter. And we raised our kids next door to a family who was involved in the McLean County Sheriff's Department. And that gentleman finally became the sheriff. And he was on the news talking about how the jails had become where a lot of mentally ill people were being cared for in the county. And Luella and I looked at each other and said, somebody ought to do something. Turned out it was us. And so we started integrity counseling with the idea of trying to reach the uninsured and the underinsured in our community. And started out with Luella in a business card. And today we've got 42 people helping us it rolls up to about 6 full-time equivalents to provide services for people who wouldn't otherwise get it. And we'll see about 350 people this year. And Verneice is one of our full-time counselors.
Wonderful. Okay. Michael?
Okay, well, Don, I'm glad Tom brought that up. I happen to be in the insurance business. And when you say that you reach out to the uninsured and the underinsured, tell us what that means from your perspective and within your clientele who you are helping.
Sure. Well, lots of times people are in between jobs and they lose work and no longer have the ability to pay. Lots of times people who even have insurance, they have a bronze plan. It's a $5,000 deductible. And then families are choosing between groceries and counseling. And so a lot of cases, the insurance process just doesn't work for people. And so we see those folks. And then the other reality is that the demand for mental health services far outstrips the supply. And a lot of people who are on Medicaid aren't able to get services in a timely way. And so we're able to reach out to people and help them often in weeks instead of months. And so that's often the kinds of people we work with. In McLean County, we have a community health improvement plan. The top 2 priorities are behavioral health and access to care. And integrity is all about providing access to care.
Okay. All right. A lot of the insurance plans out there now, especially when you look at what's called the healthcare.gov in the marketplace, in order to assist people in many areas, their tax credits and stuff, and it's supplemented by the federal government to provide the assistance. Tell us from your perspective how important it is for that program to continue. And the reason why I bring it is because the current president is talking about getting rid of what they call Obamacare, which is the Affordable Care Act. And that's the part that makes up access to certain people that would not be able to afford it because of the subsidies or the credits that's given. Could you give us a perspective from you on that?
Well, we're certainly supportive of in strengthening and improving Medicaid and its delivery around the state and the country, of course. What Integrity actually does is sit in the middle. We actually don't take insurance, including Medicaid, and we sit in a pay-as-you-can arrangement. And most of our clients don't pay very little to help support us, and we're actually operated on donations and grants. And so we kind of sit in the middle between the insurance process and absence of care. And we believe that it's important to strengthen those other processes. We hope that we're no longer needed someday because the process works. But today it doesn't. It hasn't quite got to the point where it works effectively for everyone.
Okay. Thank you. Verneice, let me ask you this. You mentioned here believing in God, and that was what helped you with the strength to carry on. For those people that do not know a whole lot about maybe faith or what have you, I'd like to get how you relied on your faith in order to move forward. And it kind of reminded me of a situation where this lady would get out on her porch every morning and pray to God to bring her groceries and do stuff for her. And she had a neighbor next to her that would say, "You believe in God? God is not doing anything for you," and stuff. But she would just keep praying. And so she prayed for groceries. So the neighbor went and bought some groceries and put it on her step the next morning. And so when she woke up and went out, she said, "Oh, thank you, God, for bringing me groceries and stuff." And he said, "It was me, it wasn't God." And she said, "Thank you, God, for bringing me groceries, and you made the devil pay for it."
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that one before. Certainly.
Okay.
So for me, the one of the first foster homes that I remember being in, we went to church every Sunday. And I, like I said, I've always listened and, I always observed everything around me all the time. And I really enjoyed going to church and learning about God. And that was something that I held on to. So, of course, the situation that I was in, I faced a lot of difficulties, being in school, not having a lot, not knowing people didn't know my situation, not knowing that other people was going through what I was going through. I probably thought I was the only, foster child in the world. So there was just a lot going on in my mind, and how kids like to bully and tease. So yeah, I lived through all of that. So in the midst of all of that and what I was going through in the homes and teenage homeless shelters and all that, that I was in, if you can just imagine, as a teenager, all the peer pressure and, all the things that out there that a young person can get into. So I always drew on my love for God, my knowledge of God, things that I learned, that I held on to was that God was omnipresent. And that even helped me, through the Army, through college. I just knew that everywhere I went, he was. So even though I was moving from home to home, he was always with me, in my heart, and would guide me. And I felt like I was being spirit led. I would never feel like God was allowing me to experience some of the things that I was experiencing, especially the negativity and the bad things. I just felt like these things were happening, and God was there for me, when I needed him to talk to or to believe that he could help me out of that situation, even if it was mentally, so that I can stay focused, on my education. Because at the end of the day, I knew that that was all that I had. So knowing that God was omnipresent was very important, to me to learn from church. And that when the scripture that talks about, when you don't have mother or father, that God will become those things for you. So just to know that there is a scripture that says when mother and father, sister, brother is not around, that he can be your mother, father, sister, brother, friend, that comforted me. And that kept me, feeling like that I would be safe. And I think that, as it's mentioned in the article, at some point in my young age, I literally saw darkness around me, even though I was moving and living around other people. And, eventually I was able to expand past that darkness and see what was around me. But that's just, how, unsafe, because having nobody, there, to be there for me to, help me out and help me through situations. So yeah, God is definitely, important. And, my kids, they fight about going to church on Sundays. And of course, I give them that same spiel that most parents, hey, as long as you're living with me and under my roof, that's what we do. We go to church, hoping that when I'm not around, my children will be able to see God, when they need him, the most as well.
Okay.
You always fall back on that training. So
Yes.
tell us about Cruisin Outta Poverty Services.
Okay, so when I was younger, I lived in a lot of places, so many places I don't even remember. But there were a few group homes that I lived in. Once I lived at Volunteers of America in Chicago, and I was like one of 24 girls, and I was the youngest. I'm sorry, I kind of got lost. What was the question again?
I was asking you about Cruisin Outta Poverty.
Oh, thank you so much. So it being in those kind of situations, I don't know, a lot of situations I'm in, I tend to see where things can be better. So even as a young child, I always observe like what's going on and how people can make things better, even with dealing with other people. So I kind of already had visions of what I wanted to do to help kids who are in those situations. So even while I was going through it, so there was another name that I had for it. But as I got older and, started going through school and learning, different things that you could actually do to help in those situations. I think in when I was here at the bachelor's degree level, I decided that I wanted to start the agency, and I pretty much started out with the acronym COPS because I wanted it to pretty much cater to people who was in emergency situations, like me. There was a lot of times where I needed things. I was a single mom. Things was just happening up and down as I was working towards, my education. And I didn't trust to go to anyone, for the things that I needed. And I feel like if there was an agency where, people knew that this agency existed, that they would be able to call and, get the help that they need. So I had the acronym first, and then Cruisin came because I went without a vehicle for a long time. And when you're homeless, a vehicle is definitely an asset. Even, public transportation is sometimes hard, to get around. If you're homeless, you don't even have a bus pass. You don't have money to get a bus pass. So once I, cruising, and it just pretty much came to my mind from there, cruising out of poverty, because that's what I want to be there for, is to be like a stair steps where people can come in and they can kind of work and do things and connect with me. I think honestly, I feel like because I went through it myself, and that I would know how to help someone else through it. I would be able to talk to them or inspire them, be able to meet emergency needs, because sometimes, if you don't have the basic needs met, you can't communicate with people. You can't, if you can't take showers, you have no way of being in front of someone communicating because you're in this state. It's hard to actually make those steps to get out of poverty. So that's pretty much where it came from. It came from watching a lot of just like people going through, and even myself, and wanting to be a part of the solution. And so that's what it was born from, just over time, and knowing what I went through, watching other people struggle, seeing the inequality. In Chicago, I think I could go from like a really decent neighborhood. Then I would go where, the neighborhood just like really trash. When I got to my biological family, they were living in Henry Horner projects in Chicago. And to me, that was the worst of the worst. And I didn't understand any of that. I didn't understand how people can be so poor and not have anything, then other people can be rich. As a young child, coming out of that situation, I couldn't understand. So that was kind of why Cruisin Outta Poverty Services was born, and why I just am committed to the rest of my life. And there's different aspects of it, but primarily I just want to be here to serve people who can't help themselves, and to be able to be like a catapult to help them. And it's been really humbling. And I just love to see people lives change and turn around because of what it's a community thing too. So that's what I love about it, because the community help. You know, it's nothing that I can do by myself.
Don, let me
Go
ask you
ahead.
a question. You have a background with Caterpillar as an electrical engineer,
Yes.
and you were doing a lot of things to help develop, build, and renovate, maintain office space. It seems like that background could come in handy in working with some of your nonprofits to help solve the homeless problem and what have you. But in addition to your background at Caterpillar, tell us the connection between you and Verneice.
Sure. Well, my business background has been very helpful. I retired early at 55, and my wife and I have been full-time volunteers in running this nonprofit to try to reach those less fortunate. The benefit of the business experience is to understand how things work and to help connect integrity to the rest of the framework in McLean County. So we're a part of that fabric of the social services network. We cross-refer across all those networks. So that's a very big piece of the puzzle. The connection to Verneice actually is, if I remember right, Verneice, and you could probably correct me if I'm wrong, is that we actually reached out to Verneice to get help with transportation out of COPS.
Yeah.
Her nonprofit helped us transport a client, and then Verneice learned a little bit more about what we were doing and became a volunteer in June of 2021 and was a volunteer counselor in our framework with that master's degree. And we take people who are, most of our counselors are volunteers. They're volunteering their time or they're interns in providing services back into the community. And then Verneice was a part of our team for a couple of years. And then in 2023, in June, we brought Verneice on part-time to help us with a relationship with the Boys and Girls Club, which Verneice can chat a little bit about as well. And then in August of 24, we brought Verneice on full-time to be a counselor in our framework. So it's been a process of growth, and we've really learned a lot from Verneice. And Verneice has this fantastic ability to relate to people who are in this situation. And so many of the people that we serve have a background or elements of a background that match up with Verneice's life experience. There's a psychological measure called ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. And it's a question of about 10 questions, and it asks you what happened to you in your life. And the worse your experiences are in life, the more likely it is you're going to have either mental health issues or health issues later in life. And those things are indicators. And what Verneice's life experience is, she hits all the categories on the ACEs chart. And so she knows what that life has been like, and then she can breathe that into others and give them hope. And that's a lot of what we do together with Verneice. And then we try to collaborate with COPS as well.
Hey, Don, so you said that you guys were sitting there, I think maybe you were watching television, and what came out of your mouth was somebody needs to do something.
Yes.
What was the first thing you guys did? How did you start?
Well, Luella and I are both people of faith. And the first thing that we did is we prayed about it. We raised it at our church, and we sat with our pastor and talked about what we were thinking about doing. And then Luella and I swallowed hard and took a lease on a small office space and just got started. And the whole goal was to get other volunteers to help us serve people who were at or near poverty or at or near homelessness. And within a few months, there were 3 people working together. And over the years, we've just continually grown. And it wasn't until 2020 that we had employees at all. It was all volunteer until 2020.
Okay. That's great. Sounds good. Michael, you got anything else?
Well, I just want to say you both are an inspiration, and it's a testament to your faith that you both took a leap of faith in order to get to where you are now. And it seemed like one thing led to another, and it picked up momentum and it's continued. So it's great to have you guys here. And Don, I'd like to follow up with you on what you're trying to do as far as provide healthcare access to people within your spectrum There may be some connections between some of the other things that I do and what have you that may assist you there, possibly. We don't know, but perhaps.
How wonderful.
It'd be great.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Anything else? All right. Well, thank you guys so much, man. That was just
Yeah, thank
wonderful. We
you.
appreciate it. And yeah, get in touch with Michael. He gets around. Let me put it that way. All right. Well, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you all for having us. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Well, my closing comment today, or as I see it, is as college students dig in for the winter spring semester, I want to pay tribute to the Melton Scholars of Auburn University. Who are the Melton Scholars? What are the Melton Scholars? Well, you may remember we had them on the show last year. Michael Waller is an Auburn grad, and he is the founder. Justice Harold Melton is who the program is named for. There's an advisory board that I've been fortunate enough to serve on, and most importantly, there are 2 years of students who are succeeding. The program overall is designed to provide financial resources, academic programs and support, and an introduction into campus life and traditions to students who otherwise may not have had this experience. We will have some of those students in an advisory member with us this semester, and we look forward to having them here. That's our show for today. We want to thank the audience. We appreciate you. I really want to thank the TWT team because today we had Barbara was out with COVID. Sean had to take an exam this morning. Emily had to take her child to the doctor. And so we had to kind of scramble and work around, but it's a good team. I appreciate them, and I just appreciate what they do. So we want to thank our sponsor, Best Girl Inc. Thanks again to the TWT team, Barbara, Sean, Emily, Michael, and Joyce. And that's it for this January 28th in the year 2025. Remember, a day without a smile is a day wasted. Enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe. Peace.